All right, good morning and welcome back to Morning Express. Time now for The Way It Is, and we'll be discussing a lot of the top stories that have been making headlines in the country this week. And in studio for this conversation, we have lawyer Ambrose Weda, who joins us. Thank you so much for coming to studio. We also have a media commentator, Crispus Yankem. Thank you so much. And we also have a youth leader and MP aspirant in Embakasi North constituency, Yusuf Ali. Many thanks for joining us. And we also have Mombasa Senator Omar Hassan, who will be joining us in the course of this interview. But let's begin, gentlemen, with the top story in politics this week has been the NASA rally. The opposition coming together. This is, I believe, the second rally that they've had together. And a lot came out from that rally, among them the 9 pillars that the opposition NASA will be bringing to the table. Because the question was, what is the opposition going to bring to the table? Weda, I don't know if you've seen those 9 pointers that they're bringing. What are your thoughts on those?
Those are, I would call them platitudes that they want to use to sell to the public. They're the same old people, especially when you take Honorable Raila Odinga. He's been Prime Minister of this country. Kalonzo Musyoka, he's been there. Vice President, if you take Musalia Mudavadi. In fact, our Deputy President combines their years in government to be 100 years plus. So now it is time to craft the so-called pillars to sell. But I think they have to go through this problem. One, between Musalia Mudavadi and Kalonzo Musyoka, because obviously, if Raila is not the presidential candidate, there will be no NASA. That you take to the bank, whether it is a collapsed bank or a...
But they've made it very clear, it's an open process. There's about 5 people waiting to be flag bearer.
Let me now tell you, we have lived in this country long enough, and you see Raila, when he talks, he says he has 1 bullet. And this bullet is going to fight. How is he going to fight? Not from the reverse. He's going to fight from the front. He's either the presidential candidate or there is no NASA. That's number 1. Then we have either Kalonzo Musyoka as the running mate or Musalia Mudavadi. Then one of the two must be a Raia who will wait for a seat in case they win. Okay, either Musalia Mudavadi will be a Raia or Kalonzo Musyoka. And when that time comes, we are going to move in as Jubilee to take one of them. I'm going to tell them what have they offered, a seat in the future. So it is good to offer the pillars now, as Jubilee will be offering. We have done this. The standard gauge railway, as much as they criticize it, in May, you will see the train here, and we'll welcome you and the entire standard media group to go and see the inside, the outside, and to enjoy it. And so as much as they are moving, which is very good, and I thought at this time they would have been down on the ground asking people, organizing people to take votes, not doing rallies and doing catwalk in rallies. They should have gone down the way government has gone down, the way William Ruto has gone down, the way President Uhuru has gone down, to talk to Wanjiku in the village. And those who don't have fare, you tell them, I know you don't have fare. Here is some fare.
But hasn't the opposition done that? They've been carrying out several rallies as well.
But those rallies don't work. That's why they are not having numbers. There is Wanjiku, there's a Tieno, there is a Jepkoech in the village who cannot move 20 kilometers to go and pick her ID because she doesn't have enough 10 bob. This is what the leaders, the MCAs, the MPs, the governors should be doing. And that's what they're not doing. They'd rather travel to Bomet to go and dance on the dice than to ensure that Wanjiku doesn't have 10 bob, gets the 10 bob, to go and get his ID and whatever. So as much as they are moving, they have a long way to go this time round.
All right, we'll be getting back to you on that. Yankem, before you give your thoughts on these 9 pointers, I mean, just respond to what Weda is saying with regard to if it's not Raila Odinga, then there's no NASA, because we've seen a lot of back and forth. Just yesterday, Kalonzo Musyoka saying he's not willing now to play second fiddle to anybody who's going to face off with President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Well, thanks, Michelle. But first of all, allow me to get just one issue off my chest. And that is the recruitment process that is ongoing somewhere in Uasin Gishu by a team of officials from Bahrain. You know that they are recruiting young talent from Uasin Gishu, and they want to take them all the way to Bahrain to become the citizens of that country. I think that is a very fundamental matter that we must address at this particular time, because we know that Kenya's prowess in terms of field events, that is actually track events, has been quite amazing in the past years. And If at all we are going actually to allow that to happen, I think going forward, will suffer a very, very serious debilitating blow in terms of even our track events. If I were in Parliament, and I think this is a challenge to people like Weda, and I know he's not in Parliament, but he speaks for government in some quarters, and people like Hassan Omar, I think they can earn some bonga points by addressing that matter. But let me come back to what he said, that if it is not Raila Odinga, then there is no NASA. Michelle, I think I must tell you that I was one of the people who never saw NASA coming. We never believed that it was going to happen. And I know even within the code fraternity, most of them did not actually see this thing coming, especially when Musalia Mudavadi proposed that they should come together under the umbrella of NASA. But going forward, looking at the rally in Bomet, I think it is important for even the Jubilee side to be able to appreciate that actually this train seems to be moving, and it is better for them now to start now strategizing, because the rally in Bomet was so significant. Never mind the crowds, whether they are fictitious or not, but I think it is a message. You saw even they went ahead to break the official protocol, quote unquote, and decided to address the rally, Raila Odinga, Moses Wetangula, Musalia Mudavadi, not in the way that we've actually been seeing. Forget about whether Raila Odinga took the largest chunk of the time that was provided. But I think it is important for us to be able to read the signs of time. You know, in politics, Michelle, and I know Weda knows this pretty well, you cannot afford to underestimate your political opponent. It is for your own sake.
Right.
Yes.
Right, that's very interesting. And let's bring in Yusuf Ali, who is the MP aspirant Embakasi North. I mean, there's been a lot of back and forth, Yusuf, between NASA and Jubilee, and who has the better plan for Kenyans. You know, the other one does not have the better plan for Kenyans. And so NASA now has come up with its 9 pointers. I don't know if you've taken the time to look at them. What are your thoughts on what you have to offer?
Okay, well, thank you for me, Michelle. I think for me, this is a prolonged script of guesswork that is being fabricated in front of Kenyans. They have so far lied 3 times. The NASA
Which
team,
3 times are those?
They had called a bombers meeting to announce a lineup to the Kenyans, and still that did happen. Now they have started going around the country. I am surprised. It's ironical. The brother here is saying they have broken protocol. We don't know which protocol, because they don't even have a flag bearer. They don't have a proposed structure of governance. For me, this is a prolonged guesswork that Kenyans are really reading, because for me, I believe Kenyans today are fed up on this kind of politics where you try and gang up in tribal cocoons to form a government without
Michelle,
any manifesto.
Michelle, let me say this.
Let's just
No,
let
let me
Yusuf finish off his
listening
comment
to
just before.
These are kind of tribal cocoons. We have seen the Luyas trying to gang up and say that Musalia is their leader. Now we are seeing him again, that they are proposing him for governor. The kind of information that is coming out from the quarters, for me, is a package of guesswork that they should give Kenyans a break, and they should come up with the clear structures of how a party should form governments. These are all very clear, that you have a presidential candidate, you have a vice president, all that is enshrined in the Constitution, so that you can face Kenyans and tell them, now this is what we have for you as a second choice. Yeah.
All right. Let's hear from you, Crispus.
No, Michelle, you know, like I said before, the biggest, I'm glad that he's running. And if actually that is the kind of sentiments that he's expressing, and that is the kind of approach that he's using in Embakasi, then he's bound to fail. In politics, you can never underestimate your opponent. That is the point, and that is what I said. You know, the NASA team seems to be learning from the best. They seem to be learning from history. You know, in 1992, it was so difficult for the opposition to unite. The same happened in 1997. In 2002, that particular arrangement of the Mwai Kibaki and seems to be happening right now. The team under NASA seem to be well aware that unless they unite, under whatever arrangement, they cannot outsmart the Jubilee administration. you know that the Jubilee administration is well aware that things are really moving. And for them to be able to outsmart Jubilee administration, they must craft something. And that is what we are seeing. You saw in Kericho, they seem now to be talking about issues. They talk about the plight of farmers in Bomet when it comes to tea, when it comes to maize farming, when it comes to milk. And I think the 9-point agenda is actually something that they must have thought about for them to start now selling to Kenyans. If they continue in that particular fashion, I think Jubilee will be in for trouble.
I mean, and let's get your final comment on this.
I think
Crispus keeps saying, do not underestimate your opponent. Do not, because taking a look at history and all opposition alliances we've had, they've been rather strong.
Now, I don't know where I get the impression that we are underestimating the opponent.
You say
we are not underestimating anybody. Even if you gave us rectangular in the morning, we'll not underestimate. We have a 10-point plan on each of them. That is why what is at the table for us today as they go around dancing in rallies is for us. Please allow me to finish.
Where do you get this notion that Raila Odinga is going to be the candidate of NASA?
Just allow me to finish. That is why for now what is at the table for us in the next 2 weeks is about voter registration. And it is not about rallies alone. Let President Uhuru Kenyatta do rallies. Let the Deputy President do rallies. But us, we have gone down in the village. That's why the other day you saw Raila complaining, oh, the chiefs are being used, oh, these are being used, oh, people is being used. Because our strategy, we know that CORD has been there, containing all of them. The only new addition is Musalia Mudavadi, who went away with about 400,000. Votes. So even if you put NASA, it is the same old forest. What we are working on is, if Musalia was to come in, is coming up with an extra 400,000 votes. We are working how to mellow down the 400,000 votes and get another 3 million. So as we are working with actuarists and planning down, not the rallies. Rally, even if President Uhuru Kenyatta today was to go to Kenyatta Sports Ground, the rally will be full. But that may not be his votes. Just like they went to Bomet, it was full. Those are not their votes. They know it. So as we are working towards winning the elections, we are not working towards showing the world that we can call rallies. I say here in this program, in '92, I was just leaving university. I accompanied the late Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, the end of opposition politics, to Voi in Taita Taveta, and then later to Mombasa, Tononoka. The grounds were full. And as a young man, I said, we have taken power. I said, if you oppose Jaramogi, you are finished. When elections were done, Jaramogi was number 4. He was defeated by Matiba, he was defeated by Ben Kibaki, and he was a distant 4th. That is when I realized crowds are not just enough. Sometimes you can take, somebody can take a goat to the market, and another one takes a hyena to the market. Now, you will find the side of the market where the hyena is, there may be more people than the side where the goat is. But you think they want to buy the hyena. They just want to see the hyena. So crowds alone are not enough. You must go down and get. When Raila Odinga was prime minister, Honorable Raila Odinga was prime minister, Kalonzo Musyoka was vice president, they were all in power. They had all the huge crowd. How come these people who are suspects in ICC, they just came from outside and grabbed the power from them? So we know the strategies, and we can assure you that this time it is going to be a 3 million gap.
All right.
3 million.
All right.
Michelle, allow me just to
I'm not sure where you're
respond
getting your statistics
Yes,
from.
yes.
You'll be telling us a bit later, Yankem.
Yeah, the thing is, you know, Ambrose Weda is a lawyer of no mean repute. And he seems not to be listening to me very well.
Yes.
At one particular time, he says that they are not underestimating anybody, whatever the person is. But at the same time, he's saying that they are planning for Raila Odinga. You know, that is contradictory. You know, you are going into these elections.
In fact, he says they have 10-point plans for each of them.
You are going into this election assuming that Raila Odinga is going to be the sole NASA presidential candidate. That is a big mistake. Let me tell you, Michelle, the meeting or the rally in Bomet was organized by the Kipsigis Council of Elders. Right?
Right.
That should tell you something. You know, there are a lot of issues that were raised, particularly issues around Itare Dam. You know, if I were Ambrose Weda,
Yes.
what I should be doing right now
Yes.
is actually to advise government
Yes.
to address that matter on Itare Dam, because that is the hot potato in Bomet. That is a matter that cannot be left until the elections are called. And you know, the opposition seems to be harping on that. You had Raila Odinga, you had Kalonzo Musyoka. He is actually offering himself pro bono services to ensure that that matter is addressed. Kalonzo Musyoka.
That one doesn't even know basics.
No, forget about whether he knows basics or not. But two, it will be a tragedy for Ambrose Weda to assume that everything is pretty in Bomet. You remember during the by-elections in Kericho, a lot of issues came up. But you remember what happened eventually. The deputy president was forced to camp there, not 2 times, not 3 times, but close to a week just to settle one matter. Ambrose Weda,
Yes.
for the sake of this particular show, for the sake of your own political survival, please address the issues that are being raised.
All right,
or else
gentlemen, we'll be coming back to this. And let's begin, Yusuf, now. I mean, the party nominations are very close, and many analysts say this is where the battle will be fought, especially for these big parties, Jubilee, and then we have now opposition outfit NASA. And like Weda said, they're waiting to even grab a few of the appointment from the opposition to join Jubilee. I'm sure they'll be waiting to do that after the nominations. But Yusuf, there's been a lot of disenfranchisement, a lot of aspirants, especially new ones, feeling that they're disenfranchised, especially by those who've been in politics for quite a while. I don't know if that's still the situation on the ground.
Okay, well, thank you. For me, Michelle, I think much has been said about the nomination by the top CEOs, the president and his deputy. For me, nominations are subject to competitions. For those few of us who fear competitions, I think even if you form your own briefcase party, unless you form your own single party, which by now it is closed, you cannot anymore register a party. Nominations in Jubilee are going to be free and fair. As an aspirant, I believe and have confidence that Jubilee nominations are going to go through very well in the grassroots level. Personally, I'm competing with an incumbent. I have a feeling that we have the numbers as youths. We are going to run through the existing structures to get the win situation. For those who are incumbents, they have an extra mile to tell the Kenyans whether they have delivered what they had promised. For our brothers in NASA, I don't think we can discuss about the nominations because the guesswork is still ongoing. I've said this before, and I'm going to continue saying because when are you going to say that you will win a nomination on the grassroots level? Surely for an existing party is when you have provided a lineup from the presidency to the MCA level down there. That is when we can discuss about NASA's winning an MCA seat or losing.
All right.
At the moment, I don't think it's irrelevant to even discuss NASA's lineup because we have nothing to discuss.
All right, and Weda is really laughing about that. But Weda, let's pick nominations just before we move on to the
I
voter
think nominations
registration.
are going to be a headache for both NASA and the Jubilee. As on the Jubilee side, we are just praying that the fallout is not so deep.
So, like, it's guaranteed.
Oh,
It's
definitely.
guaranteed it's going
Like,
to be a
I know my brother here has the numbers, but he doesn't have the thieving tendencies that the incumbents have. So they will be going there with his supporters.
Does he even have the numbers?
He does. He does, but he'll be going with his supporters. But the other guy will be going with his gunias. And by the time he wakes up, the gunias have gone in. And the bitterness comes. And it is both sides. That's why we in Jubilee, we were saying we're trying to ensure that we have now electronic way of voting. We have those cards. So that, and then we want IEBC to supervise, although with the time deadlines, they may find it difficult. So it is a headache. But when you move on to the NASA side, for them, substituting lists and giving people the wrong ones tickets has been normal. Normal for them. As Omar was in Jubilee, they took away from him. He went to wipe and won. Whether was in ODM, this was taken and given, he left. So to them is normal. So theirs is going to be more chaotic. I see it. Because to them it's very normal.
I mean, and let's hear from Yankem, but we will be speaking to Omar Hassan later on to tell us what the plan is for the opposition, NASA. Yankem, what are your thoughts on how the nominations will play out?
I think the work of our relevant institutions, whether it is IBC or the political registrar of political parties, is well cut out. But let me say this. It is interesting that WEDA is finally admitting that the nominations within Jubilee and NASA are going to be a headache. Michelle, personally, before even TNA URP decided to fold up, my position was it was a wrong arrangement to go into the elections. I think they had a better strategy in 2013. You know, this is actually going to be their political Waterloo. In 2017, the nominations, you've seen a lot of people have already started leaving. Lenny Kivuti, you've seen the presidential advisor of education has already left and gone to Chap Chap. You know, that is telling you that everything is not sitting pretty. And you've seen even Moitalel Olekenta from Narok. They have actually moved to ODM. So let me say this. Jubilee administration erred by folding up those various political parties. You know, the other day, I ran into somebody who knows Kalembe Ndile pretty well. The guy was telling me that Kalembe Ndile is now saying that I wish I didn't fold up my political party because this is actually the season of harvesting. You've seen Mutua is harvesting.
Yes.
And it is not just coming in terms of numbers, it is coming even in terms of money. So if you have a political party, Michelle, maybe you need to form one and reap big in the fallout
You
that
know,
is
it
impending.
might just be the fallback plan.
But let
after
me
this.
tell you, Michelle, on a serious matter, on a serious note though, you know the TNA, the Jubilee card that was introduced, I think that was a major, the smart card, that was a major mistake. Let me tell you, what is going to happen is if Ambrose Weda has got guineas of money somewhere, what they are doing is that they are going to buy all those cards. They buy a lot of them and distribute to people that they know they are going to vote for them during the nomination. Yeah. That is so dangerous.
Right.
And I think that is a matter that ought to be addressed by Jubilee.
Okay.
They still want to be in the race.
Okay. And before we come back to WEDA to respond to that, let's now bring in Mombasa Senator Omar Hassan, who just joined us in studio. And Senator Omar, the conversation now is on party nominations, and we have Jubilee supporters here who say, you know, in terms of Jubilee, they're hoping, the fallout isn't so bad, but NASA is completely in disarray, so they don't even know where to begin with party nominations. What's going on there?
I've been listening, and you know, today with live stream, there was a bad jam in South Sea. I don't know for what reasons. Usually, I had the weather talking about us not attending rallies, how he attended the rallies when he was with Jaramogi and realized from Taita Taveta that rallies don't make up for something. But rallies galvanize a political base. The whole idea about rallies is the fact that they're supposed to excite the political base, and that creates enthusiasm. It also creates perception, and then it also becomes a medium of communication of your agenda. But as a standalone, it is not a strategy. I agree with to that extent, but they can't be underestimated. My brother, politics is part guesswork, part strategy, because also you're guessing, you know. Because what you do is you say that I probably can win a seat in Starehe, I can win a seat in Embakasi, I can win a seat somewhere. And therefore, it is itself a guesswork. And everywhere in democracies, particularly African democracies, opposition unity is not a cup of tea. It is really, really a deliberate, you know, trial and error kind of a thing. You try and you fail, you try again and fail again and try again and fail again. Because an overbearing executive is always able to poach, entice, buy, and all this type of things. And what is always ailing opposition is the lack of resource. So the lack of resources itself a dent. It's a massive capacity gap where it's fairly exploited. That's why we decided to put in laws that have not been obeyed, that you cannot transit from your party without seeking an election. Yeah, so that we disabuse this notion of opposition parties, or governments poaching into the opposition so as to narrow their capacity, and that also affects the whole oversight mandate of the opposition. But on terms of the nomination, every party is thinking very hard. But Yankem, I agree with you, but even where the people just distribute the hard paper cards, which are not electronic. I think the aspirants buy volumes of these cards and distribute them to people who are going to vote for them. So these are the kinds of issues that parties are toying with. You go to universal suffrage, then it is likely that your opponents can interfere with the process. You take membership, the one who's able to take most cards from the secretariat and distribute them is probably going to have an edge in terms of the voter base. So parties are thinking very critically how to conduct these kinds of exercises. This idea of the IBC that was introduced by the Joint Select Committee. I think it's a good idea, but it should not be funded by the state. People should make requests and then see whether IBC can administer over your nominations. But the modus operandi, how are we going to finance them? How are we going to secure the vote in the sense that...
What about the time aspect as well?
The time aspect is there because you see all parties must stand over their nominees by I think 8th of May. So in other words, most of the nominations are going to take place, in my assessment, the second half of April.
Right. And the bigger question has been, does IEBC have the time and the capacity
to do
this?
Yes, that's why some of us say, you see, like right now, what it needs to precipitate an IBC intervention in any nomination process is to have 2 or more political parties make that request. Jubilee has already made that request. Jubilee can just ask another political party, even whatever parties they're called, just go and lodge another request. And that means therefore, and then the law that was amended, the controversial amendments that we fought in the floor of both the National Assembly and the Senate, proposes that once those 2 parties make that request, then Parliament shall provide resources, or the National Assembly should provide resources towards those nominations. I think if IBC was to be put into the mix of party nominations, it will be setting itself up for failure.
All right.
So I think it's a bad idea at this point in time.
All right, gentlemen, let's move on very quickly to the voter registration exercise that is still ongoing. It's the second last week now, and let's begin with you. The last time you were sitting here, you were asking me, where are you seeing this voter apathy that you're talking about? Yes. I mean, do you still have the same view, or has your view changed now? Voter apathy is there. My view has not
changed. There is no voter apathy. There is a category of, I call them, let them not stone me for saying, I call them the yo-yo generation. The daddies and the mummies' children. They are now the majority, under 25, 23. They do not know whether Honorable Raila Odinga was in detention. They do not know the difference between Uhuru Kenyatta and Jomo Kenyatta. These people, even for them to go and get ID, you have to urge them. You have to ask them, do you have an ID? Say no. Then you tell them, you take them. The very children that when we take to school, we fill forms for them, university forms. You fill and then you register for them. And then when you ask them, what do you want to start? They say, Daddy knows what I would like to say. Yeah. When they are sent to you to help them get a place, somebody comes and says, what do you want? He says, Daddy, I'd talk to you. So what exactly do you want? You discuss with that. Those number of people are many. We have them in houses, in homes. They don't seem to know whether to take a vote or not to take, where to take it, when to take. This is the majority. The ones that are psyched by the Sonkos of this world. If Sonko speaks and walks and sags, then they'll go and take the vote. If you take Honorable Kalonzo, your party leader, and he speaks, they say this one is an old man. Not because he is old, but the way they look at the world is totally different. So this is the big number that are not registered.
You think they're not voting because the leadership is not of their age, or not because they're just tired of the leadership?
No, I think the late Professor Nyasani used to tell us that if you say something and we don't seem to understand it, just understand the generation gap. The generation gap.
All right,
if you look at them, even in universities today, you know, now the universities will be at the forefront of voter registration, and most university students used to oppose government, and they were very violent about it. The current ones we have, They are just having the earphones and they're dancing. They don't know whether Uhuru is in power or Raila or Kalonzo or my presidential candidate Hassan Omar. They don't know. These are the people we must design ways to psych them, not only to take IDs, but to go and take Kura, and then the time comes to psych them to vote. It is not voter apathy. The ones who are informed like me and Hassan Omar are very ready. But my own child wonders. You even tell him things about CORD, Jubilee, they don't understand.
All right. Let's
So
bring
that is
in
the critical mass.
let's bring in Senator Omar, because Senator
Michelle
Omar...
is very offended. You called her yo-yo generation.
Those are reports by IEBC that by the end of the 2 weeks of voter registration, there is voter apathy according to IEBC, but Jubilee strongholds had registered more voters as opposed to opposition strongholds. I mean, Senator, is this something that Jubilee is doing right, that the opposition needs to start doing?
One thing is Jubilee knows power. So our people think, I think we've fed them too much with this perception that they might steal the elections. So we need to also change our approach in terms of how we mobilize voters. Secondly, I don't rule out the possibility that provincial administration is being used. I had when I speak to it, that it's not just an allegation. The all tools necessary and possible are being put in. But also there's what I call the backlash of your own strategy. I remember I was in Istanbul, and I was talking to some friends there. I had gone for to pass my condolence to a friend's family, and they were telling me, we are coming out in large numbers because we are hearing what you're saying on national TV. So you think you're telling you guys to come out. What do you think? We'll also come out to preserve our own. So I think the whole idea of how we conducted the exercise in terms of voter appeared it was a contest between CORD and Jubilee. It was not taken that it is your inalienable right for you to register as a voter. In fact, the strategy I have used in Mombasa, albeit at the lower level, because if you excite the opponent's base, it is also going to come out in response. So what you do is you do it in a manner that is fairly more broader and more liberal in terms of its approach. So I've asked guys to just demonstrate to people that even if you do not vote for the candidate Omar, it is your right to vote so that you speak to the type of leadership that you want to speak to. And I was told with that approach, actually, people are actually saying, we will vote for him then. Now that register kura, because other people are making it appear like they've started an early campaign. So you make it, you brand it, you put your name and your face and your everything to it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong to that. If your face can sell, if your face can mobilize. Well, most of the candidates are just selling their names and their faces. So I think it was done in an approach as to mean that if I register Michelle, then she's going to vote for me. And if the other one registers Yankem, then it's going to vote for Yankem. So we've polarized it. So it's like an early election, and it's like a roll call of who has the numbers. So here we are saying that we need to cover the gap in quotes the Rhino tyranny. And here the tyranny is coming out, literally optimizing. Because if you look at the statistics, it says that this many 100,000, it's 75 or 70% turnout in terms of voter. These ones are this many thousands, much less. It is 44, 45.
Right.
But I want to make this last point. I said it in the first show that you had, the special show to mark the voter registration last month. When I said it, I have spoken to people, some of the people in the Coast region, and asked them, why are you not registering to vote? They told me, that is my vote.
So
it's not that I do not know that I'm supposed to register. The systems have failed. There's despair. I do not appreciate that the county government is going to do anything for me. I do not believe that the national government is going to do anything for me. If you want me to help you as a friend, as a guy who's conversing with me in one-on-one, then I can help you on that. But to tell me that, but it's not because we think any of these leaders represent any transformative agenda. So there is also those people who their vote is the fact that they're not registering to vote. That is already their vote. It's a protest, and therefore it is foolhardy to expect that everybody who's a registered, who has a national ID will register to vote.
All right, that's a very interesting comments there. Let's hear from Yusuf before we come to you, Yankem.
Michelle, I think for me, I don't get. I'm very amused because. CORD are very busy pointing fingers at the strongholds of Jubilee registering in large numbers. Raila is very busy going around the country, disturbing people with choppers dust. Yet his stronghold home, Kisumu, MCAs have literally pocketed 20 million and gone for a honeymoon or a vacation that during this period where he requires them to mobilize in large numbers.
Right.
And tomorrow he's going to stand here and give a press conference that figures have been cooked. So for me, I see a lot of irony, and he's not honest. He should be honest to Kenyans. For us, the young generation, we are fed up with this kind of games. These are mind games. His mind games are literally expired. They are past overdue by time. And on the second issue about, I have heard Mheshimiwa talking about is the issue of party. The day I will hear NASA announce officially their lineups, their manifest, I have only seen 9 points. I don't think 9 points can make a manifest. And I don't know those 9 points are for who. Are they for Raila or for Kalonzo or for Mudavadi? We even don't know. Because the NASA team, everybody speaks for himself.
And I mean, Omar Hassan is here. He can clarify where
just a
that
moment,
is coming
Michelle,
from.
before-
But yes, let's hear
before
from
Omar-
Yankem. Let's hear from Yankem before we do that.
Let me say this. I totally agree with Ambrose Weda and my brother Hassan Omar in terms of what is actually informing voter apathy, whether it is there or not. There are quite a number of issues. One of them is the ongoing drought. It is major. You see, in places like Turkana, Samburu, it is so difficult for you even to get somebody to come and register. You saw the other day the president went to Samburu. He was talking of the IBC clerk following up the herders so that they can come and
the
register.
IDs.
Yeah, hunt the IDs, deliver the ID to them and ensure that they have registered. At the coastal region, the same thing is happening. But again, there are other fundamental issues. For instance, security in Mandera, in the entire northeastern, in Baringo. Those are major issues that ought to be addressed for us to be able to reach the numbers that were projected by IEBC. But having said that, let me say that the other important point that I think Ambrose Weda mentioned was actually the yo-yo team. You know, the other day I met a friend of mine who's about 22, and I asked him, do you have a voter's card? He told me, no, I haven't gone because, you know, I was waiting. So that last minute kind of approach by Kenyans and the yo-yo kind of mentality is informing quite a number of issues. And I think the media ought to help us in order for us to be able to address such kind of issues. The Jubilee administration, whether we like it or not, they have a better strategy in terms of mopping up the numbers. I've said it on this particular show time and again that anytime I go to Thika, anytime I go to places of Central, the former Central Province, you realize that you meet even the leadership, members of parliament, you meet even MCAs mopping up their own resources, going to villages, mounting those trucks, and telling people, now you must come out and register in large numbers. Raila Odinga and the NASA team, when they are going around the countries, I think they're spending a lot of time in rallies. When you spend about 2 hours in a political rally and you expect people to come and register, I think it will be a waste of time. And that is the kind of approach. They need actually to reconsider their strategy in the last, I think they're remaining about 8 days to go.
8 days.
They must be able to reconsider their strategy if they are able to, for them to be able actually to realize the numbers that they had projected. Yes.
And of course, you know, one would have expected that if you're going to a region where they're battling drought, that you solve the issues first and then ask them to register as voters. But these are things, of course, that we haven't seen being done. Weda, let's get your final comment on this.
Let me tell you, I think for the first time in independent Kenya, there is a huge tarmac road going to Maralal. It's only about 650 kilometers to reach Maralal. I've been there and I say, wow, what a wonderful job by the Jubilee team. The Raila team were there with the Kibaki, but I think they never bothered about Maralal. Secondly, these huge rallies that the Right Honorable Prime Minister is calling, I've never heard him complain that whenever I call my rallies, I want the registration clerks also to be with me in these rallies, so that I address these people, and those who don't have, they sit. Remember when the president went out and he was told, Your Excellency, we have problems with IDs. He immediately said these things can be done in 3 days. And 3 days means you get the documents, you bring them to Nairobi.
And where is that being done, Weda?
It is being done.
Because people are getting IDs in Nairobi, they're still being told to wait for 2 weeks.
Now, let me tell you how it is done. You clear with your village, okay? Then they are brought here for the final stages. Now, the leadership, even in Kisumu, I've seen. Now, this is where you get an MCA or somebody on the leadership picking the IDs, getting into the night bus, okay, with the registrar. They come to Nairobi, they are done, and then they carry them back. 3 days, it is working. But some people have chosen to cry on the graves of voting. So they say, President Uhuru should come here and continue ordering people on 3 days when they are not following the instruction. It is open for everybody. When the president went there and said, now there's drought, people are moving with their cattle. What solution did he give? Please follow them. This is the time when even Raila would be insisting, if I were him, I would be saying, President Uhuru, why are you just addressing people in Samburu? Why not come to Kisumu? We are waiting. Also come to Kisumu, we have gone to Bomet. Then when he comes to Kisumu, we tell him here in Kisumu we are facing the following problems. Okay? Then he will say, this problem is solved today. But then they want to cover their areas and then they go to Bomet and dance. Yet they are not just addressing the core issues. One of the core issues I'm saying, I know there are people who are willing to go and get that ID. They are willing to go and vote. But due to distance, they can't go. They need border fare. And that's why we need Senator Omar and the Johos of this world. Now, this is the time the choppers and the monies and the millions should have rolled down, let's say in Kisumu County or Luoland. Say, you don't have fare to go and pick? Here is 100 shillings. Now, they don't want to do that. They just want to blame President Uhuru. Oh, provincial administration. Oh, weekly administration.
Right.
Let us have practical solutions. Otherwise, the time it will be so large. If my brother, presidential candidate, Hassan Omar, had the millions that these people are having, I know his strategy is good. CORD and NASA would be having a huge registration, but his is less. The ones who have money are busy in choppers, running all over.
Okay.
So
just a quick one.
Let's just have Omar respond to that because that was directly to him.
I think you don't be worried about the NASA candidate, brother. He will be announced. Opposition politics, you have to understand the context of opposition politics. When you are an incumbent, it is much easier because the path is so much more refined and defined. So you know that Uhuru Kenyatta is more likely than not going to seek a second term, and you endorse that as the candidacy. That was the same thing that happened to Barack Obama when he was seeking a re-election. The opposition undergoes the process of nomination. That is, the Republicans until that point when they present the challenge to Obama, Mitt Romney, and he's flawed. And there's all this bickering, and whenever there's party primaries and party trying to organize itself. Building a house is when you're building this studio and you come and you find it's chaotic. Everything is everywhere. There are pliers, screwdrivers, plumbers, everybody going up and down. But then it ultimately becomes a good studio. That's the nature of any constructive work. Secondly, this is premature for a manifesto. Manifestos, I hear that a lot from Jubilee. Where's your manifesto? Democratic balance means that you first audit government. So at the time when the official campaign period is launched, even that happens, I see that also at county level of government. The ignorant membership or followership of an incumbent is always asking for a manifesto. These manifestos don't come now. Manifestos will be there. What I say means it's an alternative to what he is doing. If I say there's a lot of corruption, means I will not steal or I will not undertake corruption. So I see this a lot. In fact, there's an ignorance on both sides. You see the same guy who was auditing Jubilee without a manifesto in quotes from code. When you ask him in his county, he tells you, where is your manifesto? Manifestos are an official document of campaign. They are launched during the campaign period. They respond to all these travesties that we are talking about. So manifestos will come. You don't launch a manifesto in January.
Give him time. All right, gentlemen, I would like us to move away from this topic. We don't have much time left and focus on drugs now, and especially, all right, Yusuf, you have something else to add.
Before you finish. The irony in this whole game is that the Right Honorable Raila, he was in government before, in the year before Jubilee came to power, and he was complaining the same way he's complaining today about IDs and registration. And yet that time, he was in government. He was in charge of all machineries. He was moving the same way with choppers, championing issues of you know, once you learn to be an opposition leader, you'll always be an opposition. He was even forgetting that he was in government and a prime minister by contradicting his own partner in the government that registration is going on in a funny way. So I think it is important, and the Kenyans have learned these scripts. These prolonged guesswork should be cut short, and we come to reality.
All right.
Well,
all right.
Okay.
All right, Yusuf. Thank you so much for that. Let's not focus on the war on drugs. This is something that has been taking center stage since the extradition of the Akasha brothers from Mombasa. That was about 1.5 weeks ago. Before we continue this conversation, let's listen in to Deputy President William Ruto and what he had to say on the war.
Wale walanguzi, wale wanaofanya biashara ya kuuza madawa ya kulevya Mombasa hii, haijalishi wako na uwezo gani wa kisiasa, sisi tutapambana na wao, na nchi hii watakihama, watahama. Mimi nawaambia, kwa sababu haiwezekani ati wewe ni kiongozi, ati wewe ni mfanyabiashara, kazi yako ni kuuza madawa ya kulevya, watoto wa Wakenya wengine wapotee, wewe ukue tajiri na watoto wako wasome. Hiyo haiwezekani. Haiwezekani bwana. Hiyo haiwezekani.
All right, Deputy President William Ruto there at the Coast Region speaking on the war against drugs. And let's begin this with Senator Omar Hassan. This is he's referring specifically to Mombasa, the coastal region, and he's talking about viongozi and wanabiashara who are, you know, taking part in this drug business. I don't know what you have to say about that.
You know, there are certain narratives about the drug cartels in Mombasa and the region that have crystallized already. You know, I've spent a lot of time trying to study this Mexican model of how to fight combat drugs. First and foremost, I'm happy there's a fallout within the political ranks. For there to be decisive action, there must be a fallout.
Right.
So if there's a way one can sustain and fuel the fallouts, wherever they might be, it is the best way to serve it. If you look at how they had a run-in with Pablo Escobar. Pablo Escobar was extremely influential from the political realm of it. But then there were fallouts when Pablo Escobar decided that he wanted to fund another presidential candidate. And there were many other narratives that went side by side. So the government decided to come in heavy. And for whatever reason, Pablo Escobar was an established leader of the meddling cartel. So I think what happens is there must first be a precipitation of fallout. But what you will find in political terms, from when I studied a document that was shared with me last year, there is what they call an auxiliary network. An auxiliary network is usually a network that might not be the trafficking network itself, but it's a network of patronage and political power that is used to give safe passage or sanitize or keep away law enforcement from the roots and the cartels. So I think what happens is you compromise an entire system. So this is the hardest nut to crack in terms of fighting not only the network itself, but the auxiliary network. So I think there are two networks that we must fight here when it comes to the war on drugs. And if it is done for whatever ends, what bothers me most about Mombasa is that drug menace must be dealt with. For whatever consideration it is, you give us good evidence. In fact, evidence, unfortunately, if you look at most of the drug wars around the world, evidence on trafficking is not usually directed to the person. You'll find that people who engaged in the drug business are either convicted for money laundering, tax evasion, kidnap, murder, but they're never necessarily convicted for the trafficking itself, because it's very difficult. The Akasha is a rare one, because I think the Akasha organization, as they put it in those indictment papers, is a very small network, because I think it had collapsed following the demise of the father. And therefore, they were trying to rebuild it. In my assessment of what I've been reading, for you, as Ibrahim, for that matter, if looking at that video, for you to be the first line of business, if you are the real kingpin, you are never seen in the picture. You send errands, you send foot soldiers and all that. You never participate in it yourself. So there's really no linkage to you unless you are able, if somebody, some people decide to give evidence against you, the ones who you use in your organization. So it's usually very difficult to get to the principle in this type of war. So you need a political fallout in this magnitude for there to be political action and intervention. And you need the pressure that is coming out from our partners, because Kenya, by all UNODC reports, United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime, demonstrate Kenya as a big trafficking haven. In fact, drugs from the Far East, where there is actually the production, come to Kenya, they are repackaged, sanitized into something, and then taken to markets, because Kenya does not have the market in terms of the kind of capacity or the kind of billions the drug cartels bring in. So we are targeting kids unfortunately in the US and other European destinations where they can afford $10 for an ounce of opium.
Yusuf, before you continue this conversation, you're a youth leader, a very young aspirant, and the drug menace, of course, is affecting most youth, not just in Mombasa, all across the country. What are you intending to do to combat that menace?
First of all, for me to address the issue of Mombasa, because the Deputy President has just confirmed that it is a disaster in that county. And Mheshimiwa here, being a leader and being the only learned leader from the only learned friend from the county, because
the county of Mombasa.
The county of Mombasa. The rest we hear them, the academics are in question. So we will not even want to go that line. For the issue of drugs, him being a leader, and we are hearing that the leadership in Mombasa is partly involved in that menace. I think he's in best position to tell us, and she should directly point fingers. It is very hard because for us who come from wherever counties we are coming from, to come, you have seen how the Kenyans came out in large numbers to welcome the Deputy President and passionately listen, because, I mean, they're desperately wanting change from this regime. I think it is the high time that we normally urge our youths, wherever they are, from the grassroots level, to give information. This information is given to the relevant authorities, and time is catching up with some of these fellows. They can run, but they cannot hide. With time, as the Deputy President has confirmed, you will see some of these big fish being carried away in big choppers and planes. You know, the advantage, wherever you are in the world, if you are a drug baron, you'll be taken to another level of justice, because even if you try and bribe a few fellows, you cannot bribe everybody all the time. So for me, I'm very happy, and I have positive feeling that these fellows, time is catching up with them.
All right. And I would have loved to get comments from Weda and Yankem, but unfortunately, we're out of time for this segment. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us in studio for this conversation. That is the way it is. We have been speaking to Mombasa Senator Omar Hassan. We've also been speaking to Yusuf Ali, who is a youth leader, and Embakasi North Member of Parliament, aspirant Member of Parliament. We've also been speaking to media commentator Crispus Yankem, and last but not least, lawyer Ambrose Weda. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us in studio. And we take a short break here on Morning Express. Remember, if you're on KTN Home, Life and Style is coming up next. For those on KTN News, our top stories this hour are up next. And of course, Robin Toskin later on with all your sporting action on Sports Chat. Don't go too far.